It was a rainy day on the chairman's first memorial anniversary. Everyone was crying. But we were consoled that even the skies cried for our dear dad. Yui, Hana, Kiko, Sayuri, Asami, and I were wearing our traditional mourning kimonos and were on our way back to the main house for a reception, when something insane happened. A lady in the crowd of mourners screamed at the top of her lungs, and then another. Before long, another woman behind us gasped. She clutched at her neck, rummaged around in her kimono, and pushed people aside so she could look for something in the muddy ground. "My pearls! Someone's stolen my Nikamoto necklace!" Shout out to Kiki Rosetta for today's story. Watch until the end and comment your title ideas for the follow-up of this story or for a different one. We'll pick the most unique ones. If you can't think of a title, make sure to like the ideas you prefer in the comments and community section. Enjoy the video! Suddenly, I had flashbacks of my childhood. Back then, when I was whiling away my long afternoons, when my old parents would leave me alone without a thing to do, I read books. That was how I got hooked into mysteries. I used to dream of becoming a detective, of solving crimes and putting bad guys behind bars. Everyone at school even bullied me and called me a mystery freak. Back then, it all used to be such a distant dream. But now, I could do whatever I wanted. And if what happened wasn't a sign, I don't know what is. After all, the chairman used to always tell me, do what makes you smile. Do what makes your heart happy and excites your soul. I decided the case of the missing pearls was going to be my first case. The first victim was Mrs. Sakamoto. She was wearing a 3-tiered Nikamoto pearl necklace her husband had given to her for their anniversary, and she couldn't stop sobbing. It was as if the world was ending. "My pearls! My beautiful pearls! How will I ever sleep again?" "Hush, darling! I'll buy you a new one! A set, even!" "But those were important to me! So many memories! So many cherished memories!" The second victim was a reporter who was there to cover the memorial. A lavish bracelet that she said was her lucky charm was taken from her, and they were also Nikamoto pearls. The last victim was a blonde girl who didn't speak a word of Nihongo and only knew a few phrases of English. But she kept muttering to herself and saying something that sounded like Urnalocker, which, thanks to the internet, told me she meant earrings. She also kept pointing at Mrs. Sakamoto's neck. Mrs. Sakamoto, with tears in her eyes, smiled at the third victim and comforted her. "I think she means her earrings were the same as mine." And that's how I pieced together that the Icelandic lady was also missing Nikamoto jewelry. I interviewed them one by one. Why them? And why so specific? Who could have done this? And with our tight security? My first thought was my biological parents, but probably only because they were the only evil people I really knew. It just made no sense. I haven't even heard from them. And they weren't smart enough to pull off something like that. Before the victims and the other guests went home, Mr. Sakamoto took me aside. "Please, whatever the cost, if you could help me solve this, money is no object." "No, Sakamoto-san, there's no need for that." "But still, I'd rather someone deal with this whole thing privately. I'd rather not get the authorities involved. We're a very private family, and I just know it'd stress my wife out so much if a bunch of cops crowd our living room. Get her necklace back. For me." He showed an envelope in my hand and hurriedly walked to catch up with his wife. When I opened it, I was stunned to realize he'd left me a blank check. That evening, I pored over the guest list for any name I didn't recognize. But every single one of them was a close relative or family friend. It only meant one thing. Whoever the culprit was, we knew them. I watched and rewatched what CCTV footage we had. Unfortunately, the chairman's memorial was held at his grave, which was deep in the bamboo forest. And out there weren't any cameras. All I had was the footage of guests arriving and walking towards the forest before they all disappeared out of the camera's frame. Nobody looked suspicious. It stumped me. And soon, even my wives began to take interest in the whole thing. By day, I was chairman and CEO running a multinational company and going on meetings and opening new branches. By night, I was a novice sleuth, asking questions and deciphering every single detail that I could have missed. Yui was always the first one to join me in my nighttime adventures. She'd help me organize my evidence. Every little thing I can't make sense of, and she would arrange them all into groups. Then, Kiko would come home from her own job as the company's top marketing executive and immediately get stuck into our detective work. She would point out possible links between the facts I collected and help us view everything from a different perspective. Hana and Sayuri made us all dinner and snacks. They were awesome at figuring out who we should talk to. Both of them had all the right connections, too. And Asami was the one with godlike instincts. She was the first one who realized that the missing jewelry were part of a set. I immediately Googled the brand, and sure enough, Asami was right. The necklace, the bracelet, and the earrings could all be bought separately, but they were indeed all part of a set. Only 3 sets have ever been bought, and when I saw that, my instincts began to go crazy. Hana and Sayuri worked on contacting their friends who worked at Nikimoto, and within the hour, we had our list. It was a list of people who had previously purchased that set. The first name belonged to the first lady of my old country. The second set was bought by a Singaporean heiress. And the third name was Mr. Sakamoto's. I had an epiphany. A set! All worn by 3 different women. I thought it was all coincidence, but it was the only thing that made sense. I made a call, and without wasting any more time, my wives, Hildy and I met with Mr. Sakamoto. He took a lot of convincing, but he eventually let his secret out. Yes, it's true. I bought the set for Anna. She's just so beautiful, and I wanted her to wear something that was just as beautiful as her. But when I got home that day, my wife was waiting for me. And before she could realize I'd forgotten our anniversary, I pulled out the necklace and gave it to her. So, you gave the necklace to your wife, the earrings to the Icelandic lady, and the bracelet? Yes. Haru and I, we have a complicated history. We're no longer together, but yes, I gave her the bracelet. And I'm right to assume that your wife doesn't know Miss Anna and Miss Haru. The reporter are your mistresses? She has no idea. Which is why I asked you to do this quietly. Kiriko can never find out. Please, Evan, you must help me. I don't care how you do it, just get her back her necklace. I can just buy the other 2, whatever they want. Or you can think about telling your wife and apologizing to her. If you're not happy anymore, you shouldn't cheat on her. You're right. Of course, you're right. We solved one part of the mystery, but it still didn't tell us why the jewelry was stolen. Or by whom. Until a sneaking suspicion told me that I should look into each of them. If it was one of the guests, it was highly possible it could be any of them. I started with Anna, the Icelandic tourist. I couldn't find her at all. She was booked to stay at her hotel until her flight home, but nobody's seen her since. That was a red flag. I hurried to tail the reporter, Miss Haru, but if she wasn't in a news caravan, she was flying off to different parts of the country to report on breaking news. Then, Kiko suddenly came up with an idea. Sayuri, Hana, weren't you friends with that old lady? What was her name? The one with the mole? We have lots of friends with moles, the 2 girls said in unison. The one that lives in the same building as the reporter. Oh, Diddy! But why? Oh, wait! Why didn't we think of that? We all rushed to Diddy and Haru's building, and there, the old mole lady regaled us of stories about Mr. Sakamoto and Haru. Oh, you have no idea. It's been the talk of the entire building since he first came here. They fight every night. She wants him to leave his wife. He's scared of the photo she has of him. If you ask me, neither of them like each other anymore. I hear Haru's trapping him so she could keep getting money from him. With Hana's connections, we asked the cops to discreetly search her house, but no signs of jewelry there. We did get all the scandalous photos she had of Mr. Sakamoto. We felt helpless. We had no leads left. So we went to the last person we needed to investigate. Mrs. Sakamoto was not there, and her maids all looked panicked when we asked if we could wait. Then, Hildy began barking like crazy. She darted off before I could even catch her, but then she led us to a hidden gate. Behind it was a lavish garden. Ladies were having tea and men used large fans to cool them. In the middle of laughing, rich ladies who were admiring her perfectly matching pearl jewelry was Mrs. Sakamoto. My biological parents used to call Hildy stupid, but here she was, solving a mystery that I didn't even know how to solve. So, it was you all along. I thought she would have run, or at least denied it, but she stood up and looked down on me. And these pearls are rightfully mine, and thanks to Giuseppe, they're back where they belong. Giuseppe was one of the men fanning her. He was her security detail that day of the memorial. I never even knew to suspect him. I told her husband what I found, and after a massive fight and finding out that Mrs. Sakamoto was cheating on him with Giuseppe, Mr. Sakamoto called the police on his wife. I picked you up from the streets. All these years you've just been spending my money on your bodyguard. My billionaire client sued Haru for blackmail and extortion. And Anna? Hildy found the Icelandic tourist locked up in a shed in the Sakamoto estate. The bodyguard was quick to confess Mrs. Sakamoto had ordered him to kidnap her. Mr. Sakamoto and Anna's reunion was like from a fairy tale. They kissed and held each other. It was great to see two people who barely understood each other's words understand each other's souls. Mr. Sakamoto moved to Iceland with Anna, and with his recommendation, the underground detective agency I started with my 5 wives and my dog began its journey.